This is Land of Havilah, Haggai chapter 2, the final chapter of the book. All the events of chapter 1 took place in 1 month. All the events of this chapter took place the following month. Verse 1. In the 7th month, in the 21st day of the month, Yahweh's word came by Haggai the prophet, saying, Speak now to Zerubbabel the son of Shealtiel, governor of Judah, and to Joshua the son of Jehozadak the high priest, and to the remnant of the people, saying, Who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory? How do you see it now? Isn't it in your eyes as nothing? Comment: the temple is under construction and is about 4 years from being complete. Some of the oldest of the people remember the grandeur of Solomon's temple, Ezra 3:12, which the Babylonians completely destroyed. In verse 3, Yahweh speaking to that older generation, he says, Who is left among you who saw this house in its former glory? How do you see it now? Isn't it in your eyes as nothing? So it's bittersweet for that generation to see this new temple. It's depressing that it's not like the old one, but at least it's a temple. So now that Yahweh's brought up the subject, what does he have to say about it? Verse 4. Yet now be strong, Zerubbabel, says Yahweh. Be strong, Joshua, son of Jehozadak the high priest. Be strong, all you people of the land, says Yahweh, and work, for I am with you, says Yahweh of armies. Comment: Yahweh says, I am with you, meaning on the building of the temple. Since God's with them on it, there's no need to worry that it's somehow inadequate. Yahweh goes on, verse 5, This is the word that I covenanted with you when you came out of Egypt, and my spirit lived among you. Don't be afraid. Comment: when Israel came out of Egypt, Pharaoh and his army came out after them. They were pinned against the Red Sea and panicking. Yahweh's word to them at that time, or his covenant with them in that very tight spot, was, Don't be afraid, Exodus 14:13. This was the same word all the time they were in the desert with not enough food or water, with Amalekite nomads attacking them, with the rumbling and terror they experienced at Mount Sinai, with them thinking forward about invading the Promised Land, and the entire experience of being in that great and terrible wilderness, as Moses called it. Yahweh's word to them the whole time was, Don't be afraid. In verse 5 we just read, that's his word to Israel now, Don't be afraid. Yahweh's probably referring to the threat that King Darius might take offense that they're building the temple and come after them on it, Ezra chapter 5. But they have nothing to fear about it, Yahweh says to them through Haggai. Verse 6, For this is what Yahweh of armies says, Yet once it is a little while, and I will shake the heavens, the earth, the sea, and the dry land, and I will shake all nations. The precious things of all nations will come, and I will fill this house with glory, says Yahweh of armies. The silver is mine, and the gold is mine, says Yahweh of armies. The latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, says Yahweh of armies. And in this place I will give peace, says Yahweh of armies. Comment: in verses 6 to 9, Yahweh skipped forward from the present situation to the distant future. In verse 6, it is a little while, meaning according to Yahweh's time frame, it won't be long at all. He'll shake the heavens, the earth, the sea, the dry land, and all the nations. In verses 6 and 7, he'll shake up everything in a mighty way, in an unprecedented, cataclysmic way that'll change everything. He'll change the entire world and universe as we know it. In verse 7, quote, The precious things of all nations will come, end quote. In other words, right now there's a relative lack of resources for the temple to make it as glorious as the old one, but Yahweh says not to worry. When I shake the heavens and the earth, the wealth of the nations will come streaming in here. If you think Solomon's temple was glorious, just wait, because in verse 7, quote, I will fill this house with my glory, end quote. In other words, Yahweh will occupy his house in some tangible, glorious way. There's nothing like the literal presence of God to put glory on a place. In verse 8, the silver is mine and the gold is mine. In other words, financing isn't a problem because I'm rich. I'll appropriate the financing for the temple any time I want, and I will in that time to come when I do the shaking. In verse 9, quote, the latter glory of this house will be greater than the former, end quote. He'll cause the nations to serve him, to bring in the resources, and he'll occupy the place in glory such that Solomon's temple won't hold a candle to it. And finally in verse 9, quote, "In this place I will give peace, says Yahweh of armies," end quote. He'll rule with a rod of iron, Revelation 2:27, which means he'll dispense with his enemies by force, and after that there'll be complete peace and prosperity. So to all that, we say, "Come quickly, Lord Jesus," Revelation 22:20. In summary, Yahweh had something on his mind other than the building of the present temple. He used the occasion to speak of, quote, "this house," end quote, in verse 7, that one day in his timing he would make it supremely glorious. That's your narrator's commentary on this passage, but what about the commentary on it from the book of Hebrews? Quote, "Now he has promised, saying, Yet once more I will shake not only the earth, but also the heavens." This phrase, "yet once more," signifies the removing of those things that are shaken, as of things that have been made, that those things which are not shaken may remain. Therefore, receiving a kingdom that can't be shaken, let's have grace, through which we serve God acceptably, with reverence and awe, for our God is a consuming fire. Hebrews 12:26-29. So according to Hebrews, this passage in Haggai 2 indicates a cleansing shaking which will remove all that's ungodly, so that only the solid and unshakable things of God will remain. When the shaking happens, Isaiah 2:19, quote, "Men shall go into the caves of the rocks, into the holes of the earth, from before the terror of Yahweh and from the glory of his majesty, when he arises to shake the earth mightily," end quote. And Isaiah 13:13, quote, "Therefore I will make the heavens tremble, and the earth will be shaken out of its place in Yahweh of armies' wrath, and in the day of his fierce anger," end quote. So it'll be a day of reckoning. And Joel 3:16, quote, "Yahweh will roar from Zion and thunder from Jerusalem, and the heavens and the earth will shake. But Yahweh will be a refuge to his people and a stronghold to the children of Israel," end quote. So there be no terror in it for God's people. His covenant with us is, "Do not be afraid," Revelation 1:17 and Romans 8:38 and 39. And finally from Jesus, speaking of end-time events, quote, "But immediately after the oppression of those days, the sun will be darkened, the moon will not give its light, the stars will fall from the sky, and the powers of the heavens will be shaken. And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in the sky. Then all the tribes of the earth will mourn, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of the sky with power and great glory. He will send out his angels with a great sound of a trumpet, and they will gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of the sky to the other," end quote. Prophecy's like a quilt work, and your narrator has just put some patches of prophecy together, all of them having to do with shaking of the heavens and earth, but whether he's put them together in God's arrangement of events remains to be seen. Whatever that shaking is, it won't harm us. From that passage in Hebrews again, it's time to serve God in reverence and awe, because regardless of whether these passages describe a single event or separate events, an ultimate shaking will take place, so we should be ready by putting away everything that's shakeable and keeping to the unshakable things of God. Verse 10, "In the 24th day of the 9th month, in the 2nd year of Darius," comment is 3 days after Haggai received the shaking and glory prophecy we just read, now still in verse 10, "Yahweh's word came by Haggai the prophet, saying, Yahweh of armies says, Ask now the priests concerning the law, saying, If someone carries holy meat in the fold of his garment, and with his fold touches bread, stew, wine, oil, or any food, will it become holy?" The priests answered, "No." Comment, holy meat is meat from a peace offering, which a priest or some other person carries home with him, Numbers 18:18. Just because it might touch something else on the way home, it won't make the thing it touches holy. Now a second question from Yahweh and Haggai to the experts in the law, verse 13. "Then Haggai said, If one who is unclean by reason of a dead body touches any of these, will it be unclean?" The priest answered, "It will be unclean." Comment, according to the law, if a person touches a dead body, anything he touches after that become ceremonially unclean. Numbers 19:22. Verse 14. Then Haggai answered, So is this people, and so is this nation before me, says Yahweh, and so is every work of their hands. That which they offer there is unclean. Comment, Yahweh says, You people are unclean. Therefore, everything you offer me is unclean. You're working on a holy project, but that doesn't make you clean. Coming up, Yahweh says, Your lack of prosperity is evidence of your uncleanness. Verse 15. Now please consider from this day and backward, before a stone was laid on a stone in Yahweh's temple, through all that time, comment, through all the time you've been building the temple, still in verse 16, when one came to a heap of 20 measures, there were only 10. When one came to the wine vat to draw out 50, there were only 20. I struck you with blight, mildew, and hail, and all the work of your hands, yet you didn't turn to me, says Yahweh. Consider, please, from this day and backward, from the 24th day of the 9th month, since the day that the foundation of Yahweh's temple was laid, consider it. Is the seed yet in the barn? Yes, the vine, the fig tree, the pomegranate, and the olive tree haven't produced. From today I will bless you. Comment, Yahweh says, Mark this day. Until now you haven't been prosperous, but starting now you will be. Because in verse 19, I will bless you, end quote. Apparently he's reaching out in his sovereignty to cleanse them, and since they will be clean, he will prosper them. As the leper said to Jesus, quote, Lord, if you want to, you can make me clean. Matthew 8:12. So it's a good word, which is, as of today you're clean, and I'll make you prosperous. He made them clean because they listened to his word in the last chapter and began to rebuild the temple. Coming up, Yahweh spoke to Haggai a second time the same day, verse 20. Yahweh's word came the second time to Haggai in the 24th day of the month, saying, Speak to Zerubbabel, governor of Judah, saying, I will shake the heavens and the earth. I will overthrow the throne of kingdoms. I will destroy the strength of the kingdoms of the nations. I will overthrow the chariots and those who ride in them. The horses and their riders will come down, everyone by the sword of his brother. In that day, says Yahweh of armies, I will take you, Zerubbabel, my servant, the son of Shealtiel, says Yahweh, and will make you as a signet, for I have chosen you, says Yahweh of armies. Comment, verses 20 and 23 were a personal word from Yahweh by Haggai to Zerubbabel, the governor, but the same words are generally applicable to you and me. The meaning of Zerubbabel's name is born in Babylon, so he was born a captive and slave in a kingdom synonymous with evil and a kingdom destined for ultimate destruction, Revelation 17:5 and 18:21. In other words, by the circumstances of his birth, he had no future except to go down in misery and destruction. And it's the same for everyone that were born in sin, Psalm 51:5. And the outlook is no good for us at all until we're born of God, 1 John 5:18. When God chooses to sovereignly cleanse me or you, he will, quote, make you as a signet, in verse 23 we just read, as he said he would do for Zerubbabel. A signet authorizes someone to sign a document on behalf of another. It's legal authority, like power of attorney. When God cleanses us, he gives us power to act on his authority, especially in the context he just laid out in verse 22, that in a time coming we'll rule and reign with him. Quote, if we endure, we will also reign with him, 2 Timothy 2:12. He'll give us authority in that day. Instead of going down in destruction, we'll live like kings. That's the end of the book of the prophet Haggai, which transcended the building of the temple to things much beyond. Lord, if you want to, you can make us clean, so please do, as we fear your name and listen to your word. Thank you for sovereignly snatching us from destruction and giving us a future. Amen. Check landofhavilah.net for other available titles.